Это я, Commissar Binkov.
It is I, Commissar Binkov. It is time for another Scandinavian brawl. Sweden versus Finland. Both sides are Nordic powerhouses, but how would they compare in a hypothetical war breaking out between them? Swedish land forces may seem smaller at a glance, but it differently defines its support units. In reality, its active service ground component is just as strong as Finland's, if not a bit stronger. Sweden also has better trained troops, as its army is professional. 2/3 of Finnish army are conscripted. Though overall, with all the trained reservists and paramilitary accounted for, Finland is slightly ahead. The initial disposition of forces is as follows. Naturally, neither side has really many troops at the border, as the two armies are in reality meant to protect the big urban centers. Furthermore, some of these units, especially Finnish ones, are not fully manned. They are meant to be fully mobilized only as reservists are called upon. Mobility through the terrain would be of utmost importance if one side wants to conquer opponent's land. Both Finland and Sweden are quite covered with forests. While land is mostly flat, advance of large formations would be made hard by the fact that the border area is usually under a snow cover for most of the year. Both sides do feature a lot of all-terrain vehicles, and troops are trained for combat in snow. But it's one thing to hold a defensive position in snow, and another thing to move entire brigades hundreds of kilometers through such conditions, as both Soviets and Germans found out in Winter War and World War II respectively. Both sides have roughly similar number of army vehicles, with Swedes having an edge in infantry fighting vehicles, while Finland has more personnel carriers. But with the difficult border terrain through most of the year and pretty big distances, all that hardware would likely not get a chance to be used in big pushes into enemy territory. Due to initial army base locations and distances, the front line would probably form and move like this in the initial days. But due to similar forces, the front line would in reality quickly get cemented in snow. Finland's position would be especially hard to break through with their much more numerous artillery. Sweden would try to compensate with its stronger guided artillery round inventory, but the sheer Finnish firepower would still reign supreme. Air forces would of course come into play, and Swedes would try and use theirs to neutralize Finnish artillery edge. Swedish Air Force is more numerous, and Swedish pilots train a bit more. Importantly, it has some support aircraft such as AWACS, which Finland lacks. In the air battles, however, Finns can count on larger planes and more missiles per plane. While combination of ground or airborne radars and meteor missile could thin out Finnish formations, the second volley to come would also hurt Swedes a lot. Still, numerical advantage Sweden has would mean Finns could not do offensive ops over Swedish homeland. That would be accentuated by air defenses. This time Finland has some edge, as its SAMs are more numerous and modern, even if they lack range. Swedish lack of SAM system numbers means Finnish attacks beat over the front or on strategic sites would come through, and Finland does have the edge in standoff land attack weapons. Basically, the air war would be a stalemate, with Finns blocking some of the Swedish air bases with standoff strikes. Then Swedes using their numbers and special platforms to keep the Finns at bay, but themselves not being able to operate over Finland much due to numerous SAMs and total Finnish missile count. On the seas, the situation would likely mostly revolve around the Åland Islands. While Finnish, the islands are an autonomous region populated by Swedes and are demilitarized. That means there would be a race to whomever can get there first and hold it. Swedish mainland is a bit closer, but not by much. Sweden would likely use its more numerous airlift platforms and get more troops there before Finland. When it comes to amphibious landings, both sides rely only on small boats, but Sweden again has a larger fleet. Actually, whole of Swedish Navy is bigger and more potent. Submarines especially would mean Finns would not venture far out. Neither side would really even try to go for other side's mainland, as that would be a suicide mission. Once on Åland, Swedish forces could be supplied and Finns would not be able to do much about it. Surrounding small islands may also get invaded, but most of the Finnish coast would be safe, as it is too far away. Back north, the not-so-long front line would be mostly static until summer comes. If that happens to take months, then Sweden might have time to use its numerical might. Sweden has twice the population, and while mobilized civilians rarely make good soldiers, they're better than having no reinforcements. Actually, Sweden on the whole spends more on its military, enabled by its larger economy. However, one last area where Finland has some leverage over Sweden is stored weapons. Being Soviet Union's and Russia's neighbor, Finland has kept quite a cache of old weapons. Those old weapons, while obsolete, would still account for something, as the mobilized population could get their hands on some heavy weapons. Sweden's stores are also potent, but Finland's artillery edge is again especially noticeable. Both sides also possess a few thousand anti-tank guided missiles issued to the infantry, further making it hard for either side to perform a breakthrough of the front line with vehicles. As both sides fully populate the front line, they would make offensive actions come to a standstill. Finland would be unlikely to push further towards Luleå and Boden. Sweden might use its air mobility edge and go for the northern territories. If the war goes on for a year, Sweden might benefit from its stronger economy and bigger population, now even trained a little bit, and make slight movements even up north. Still, only the Finnish border towns might fall. Larger centers like Kemi would be protected by Kemijoki River. Rovaniemi, being on the wrong side of the river, might be harder to supply, but reaching it through snowy forest terrain and taking it would likely not be worth it for Sweden. Sweden would likely have destroyed a greater percentage of Finnish Navy and Air Force compared to their own losses, even though numerical losses may be comparable. Control of islands of Åland would be Sweden's biggest victory, though in the great scheme of things also not that significant. Ultimately, it would all amount to a marginal victory. Thanks for watching. If you liked my video, subscribe to my channel. And if you really like my videos, you can even support my work via Patreon. Also, check out my website for polls, video suggestions, and my store, offering some cool t-shirts, mugs, and other stuff. And remember, Binkov may talk about hypothetical wars, but only real peace can bring us all together.